So like John was saying, I do research on social networks, online social networks more specifically. Online social networks have been growing over the last 10 years, right? So with the beginning of GeoCities, MySpace, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and so forth, right? One question that we keep thinking or asking ourselves is there any value in these social networks? Or is it just a hype, right? In 2008, I didn't believe in most of the online social networks myself. I thought it's a fad. There's no value that people can gain by being part or contributing to these online social networks. Although as part of LinkedIn, I was a member of LinkedIn, I signed up on Facebook, but I never visited them. Now back then, so my sister-in-law kept asking, like, you should post pictures, you should visit Facebook more often, right? And I said that, no, it doesn't make sense. But what's the point of Facebook? You go in there, submit photos, and all you care about is how many people like those pictures. So I don't care, right? So, but she kept on insisting that I should be on Facebook. It's the best way to be connected, right? So I thought to myself, I have to prove her wrong. And I have to prove to the world that there's no value in online social networks. But I proved myself wrong. So there is value in social networks. So I focused on music and found that people actually listen to music that their friends shared. They actually liked new bands or songs from online social networks, which is pretty cool. So people are finding value from online social networks. So does that mean we should keep adding more and more friends on online social networks? Right? So if I'm learning more, then I have more friends, I'm going to learn or listen to more music, or I'm going to like more music, discover new bands, new artists, right? But is there a limit to that? I could have 1,000, 10,000 connections on Facebook. Facebook, LinkedIn, they keep recommending people. You add more, they'll recommend 100 more. You keep adding them, right? So what's the limit? Where's the catch? Now, Drake Bennett from Business Week rephrased the findings in Dunbar's paper in 1992. He said, most people cannot maintain more than 150 connections, right? So why are we adding so many connections? I'm pretty sure, like, at least I have 500 connections. Out of those 500, there definitely are 350 which I don't recall how I met, right? So why are we adding these people? Do we want to earn free burgers? Now, Burger King in 2009 had a campaign that for every 10 friends you sacrifice on Facebook, they'll give you a free burger. I could have earned 35 burgers, right? But is that what we really want? Like, we want more friends to earn burgers, or maybe later on realize that there is no value and possibly unfriend them, right?
To anyone who is not actually your friend. Most people have hundreds or thousands of friends, but the fact is most of those people aren't your friends. And National Unfriend Day is this Saturday, November 17th. If you participate, I'll tell you what, on Sunday you'll wake up having no idea what that guy you met 6 years ago at your cousin's birthday party thinks about the new Faith Hill video, and you will feel good. You will feel very good. But it isn't easy to do. A lot of people aren't sure exactly whom to unfriend on National Unfriend Day. So to help get you started, we've sorted through, and we've come up with a few common Facebook offenders that you can cut from your friends list right off the bat. For instance, the oversharer. This is that Facebook friend that posts every detail of their unspectacular life. Just had cereal, yum. Checked in at Starbucks, buying a latte. Halfway done with my latte. 3/4 done with my latte. Just finished my latte, now entering the scone zone. That person, unfriend. Next up, the animal lover. This is that person on Facebook who posts about their pet as if it were a child, but it's not, it's a pet. Mittens loves to sleep. Mittens is so tired. Zzz. Now I know why they call it a cat nap. LOL, YOLO, unfriend. It's very simple.
The idea is, yes, I mean, we don't want people or friends who spam our Facebook wall, right? So we want more people, but we don't want that many people who we don't care about, right? So Facebook learned their lesson. In 2010-11 timeframe, they started adding features to limit or screen the content that you see on Facebook, right? They also started building algorithms on what posts should show up at the top on your wall, right? So if you like somebody's picture and more frequently like pictures from a certain friend, those friends' posts will come up more, appear more on the top on the Facebook versus at the bottom, right? So the idea is we do need friends on online social networks because they help us discover more information, more music, right? And then we thought maybe more jobs. Now, why specifically more jobs? So we started thinking about jobs because one of my dear friends, Dave Bowman, he's the CEO of a company called TDG Consultants in Los Angeles. He got a project from a Fortune 500 company to help 400 plus professionals get a job who were laid off by the company because of the cost cutting. So he asked me a question, like, should we ask everybody, all of those 400 people, to spend more time on LinkedIn, or should they continue spending time on searching for jobs using traditional modes, which is agencies, newspapers, magazines, internet, and so forth, right? We didn't have a right answer at that time, but specifically when he said LinkedIn, the LinkedIn came into picture because of the demographics. These people were the white-collar workforce, right? So they were highly educated, had large experiences, long experiences, and they were earning much more than the average salaries, right? Which is the demographics on LinkedIn as well, right? So should we really help or ask these people to be on LinkedIn? Like, does social networks or online social networks matter for job search? And the initial thought or hypothesis was yes, because Granovetter, in his book, Getting a Job, said social networks, especially the weaker connections, help you in getting a job, right? Now, why specifically, or what is weak ties? So first, what is strong ties? So strong ties are classified as close friend and family member who we communicate with frequently, right? People who we call maybe best friends, close friends, and so forth. Strong ties constitute a base of trust that can reduce resistance and provide comfort. They're much harder to create and maintain. You have to have continuous communication with those people, right? On the other hand, weak ties is basically everybody else who you're connected to. Weak ties are responsible for majority of social structure. So if I'm at UT, most of my strong ties or good friends are at UT. But say if I get connected with somebody at Whole Foods, I don't communicate with them that often. Those are kind of my weaker ties. But these weaker ties are the ones who provide more new information. So if we say I have a strong tie who is at UT, whatever information, say job information they provide me, I probably can get it myself because I know I'm subscribed to mail list, I can visit all the internet sites and so forth. But maybe at Whole Foods, maybe I cannot. So that guy who's a weaker tie at Whole Foods can provide me with job opportunities at Whole Foods, right? So the question is, the weak ties, in the Granovetter's argument was if you have more weak ties, you can get a lot of job opportunities, information about a lot of job opportunities. Now, that is or has changed since early 1990s. Most companies started posting the jobs that were available on the internet, on their own websites, and as well as other job boards, like Monsters. So the question then again comes is, do we really need social networks? Or is the available information that's on the web sufficient for us, right? And the answer is in information availability versus overload. If you ask that question in early 2000, saying, do I need more connections? In early 2000, answer probably would be no, because all the job information is there on the web. You can apply, right? But over the last 10 years, or maybe say 8 years, the number of jobs that are posted are much more. When I say number of jobs posted, it's the replicated jobs. A company who wants to hire wants to maximize the visibility of the job opportunity. They'll post it on their website, they'll post it on Monster, they'll post it on Career Builder, they'll post it in newspaper. So a job seeker who's looking for a job, who's maybe spending time across all modes, he will come across the same position, but maybe structured differently, worded differently. So they're going to apply in all these different modes. Now, over these last 8 years, the number of resumes submitted for each job is about 250, which is large. Like, there's nobody in HR or a hiring manager would go through 250 resumes. Most of the people's resume won't even get seen by the hiring manager, right? There are 427,000 resumes submitted on monster.com, which is the largest job board, right? So with all this overload of information, resumes, do really these online platforms work, or do we need social networks to screen us or to limit the amount of information that's made available to the hiring managers? In addition, so like I was talking before, lack of integration and increased replication of job posts. So there's so many job boards out there. Even LinkedIn is posting jobs now, right? Plus replicated job posts, plus lack of integration. Then suggest maybe we should go to LinkedIn because they don't have a competition. There's no other professional network that we use more than LinkedIn. Jobs posted on LinkedIn are not really replicated on other social networks, maybe posted on other platforms. My professional network is on LinkedIn, but not necessarily replicated on any other network out there, right? So LinkedIn, thus, is a better platform. And also, if you remember, 10, 12 years ago, most of the people had a presence on GeoCities. They had a profile, resume, something on GeoCities, a personal website. LinkedIn replaces that, right? So Jesse Hempel, for a Fortune cover page article in 2010, said, if you are not on LinkedIn, you're nowhere, right? And she said because John Compagnano, which is head of global recruiting at Accenture, said, we are planning to hire 50,000 people over the next 3-4 years, and 20,000 of those people are going to come from online social networks, which is a very large number. So thus, there's value in LinkedIn, right, that we believe. In another study by JobWhite, the researchers found that 1 in 6 workers use social media to get hired. 9 in 10 job seekers use a social media platform, and 54% use either Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, right? So how are people searching for jobs? How are they spending time? Where are they spending time when they're looking for a job? From our data, we found that 41% of the people, or 41% of the time, is spent searching for jobs on the internet, which is the job boards, company's website, and so forth. About 22%, which is 8.7 hours per week, is spent on online social networks. Facebook, Twitter, Mashable, LinkedIn, and so forth. People spend another 5.5 hours talking to friends over phone, email, in person, and so forth, just looking for jobs, when they're looking for jobs. Print media and agencies are among the lowest in search effort. These numbers used to be very different. 20, 30 years ago, people were spending much more time on print media as well as with agencies, right? So agencies imply career centers, career fairs, libraries, and so forth, right? So people were spending much more time 30 years ago, but now it's the least amount of time is spent on those platforms or those channels. Now, with all this time spent, what is it that people are getting? Now, I'm spending, say, 8 hours on online social network. I'm going to get some job leads, and I'm going to apply for those jobs. So 44% of my job applications are submitted through the jobs that are found on the internet. 17% of the job applications are submitted for the jobs I found through social networks, online social networks. 15% through friends and family, right? These job applications convert to job interviews. So for all the job applications that were submitted through the internet, I get 43% of my interviews from the internet. I get 16% interviews from my online social network, 17% from offline social network. These interviews then convert to offers, but only 29% of the offers are received from the internet, whereas 24% from online social network, 26% from offline social network, right? So if we see the trend, we see there's a declining trend in the percentage output or return from internet. whereas there is an increasing return from offline social network, 15 to 17 to 26, right? Online social networks actually declines for interviews, but is much higher for offers, right? So, I mean, we can make this inference very easily from these charts, but labor economists said this is not enough, right? There could be many more factors that play a role when you're searching for a job. So Mortensen in 1980s wrote an income leisure utility model. He said, every person who's searching for a job searches for a job because he attains some value from his time off, and every time he spends searching for a job is taken off from the leisure time, right, or the time off. Then there's some value received from being employed, right? If I search, if I get a job, I'm going to start working, and I'm going to be happier, right? It's a hope. Then there is a utility from unemployed job search. So I get an offer, I don't like the salary, I decide to continue searching, right? And then finally, I don't get a job, so I keep searching. So he says, these are the four main components of what creates the utility for a job search, right? Our goal is then to allocate time effectively or optimally on each of the job search modes, which could be 5, 6 job search modes, the internet, social networks, online, friends and family, print media, agencies. How do we allocate time on each of these modes? By maximizing the return while minimizing the cost, right? We solved these equations, found a very relatively simpler equation. And in the result, we found that for every 3 hours I spend on searching for a job, I apply for one more relevant job opportunity. For every 10 job opportunities I apply, I get one extra job interview. For every 10 job interviews I get one job offer. And these numbers are from 2010, which had the highest unemployment rate in corporate America, right? These numbers should be much better now, right? Then we want to evaluate, does having more connections matter? Should we have 500 connections? Should we have 1,000 connections? Or should we only have 50 connections on LinkedIn, right? So average number of strong ties that people had on LinkedIn, that is the number of close friends and family members that are also part of their LinkedIn network, is 18, right? If we increase or double this number from 18 to, say, 36, we have 36 good friends. We can add all of them on LinkedIn. What is the impact on our applications, interviews, and offers? First, looking at applications, if we add more strong connections, we get submit less job applications. Why? And this is what's mentioned in Granovetter's strength of weak ties argument, right? So he says, if you have more stronger connections, say if I and John are connected and we have strong connections, right? I go to my LinkedIn profile, I see John there, and say, hey, John, can you help me with the job search? But he provides me with job opportunities that I already know. So I spent maybe those 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes communicating with him and finding no job opportunity. That 15 minutes is taken off from the total available time I had for job search in a week, right? So by adding more stronger connections, I'm actually reducing the number of applications I can submit. Whereas having more connections on LinkedIn allows me to get more recommendations, more referrals. Adding those 18 extra connections allow me to get 0.3 additional interviews and 0.1 additional job offers, right? Which is the strength of strong ties argument that we talked about. More stronger people or more people we are connected with who are closer to us, they're going to help us with the job search. They're going to maybe send a good word to the hiring manager if they know that person, right? Now looking at the impact of weak ties, the average number of weak ties on LinkedIn is 132. The impact on job leads or job applications is positive. So if I increase or double the number of weak ties, I'm able to submit 0.7 additional job application per week, right? Which is in a positive direction. And the reason is I don't communicate with 132 all in one week. I communicate with maybe 2, 3 in a week, and I probably submit one additional application. Maybe one person will come back and say, yeah, I know of a job opportunity in my company, right? Which is, again, the argument mentioned in Strength of Weak Ties by Granovetter. The interesting finding that we came across was the negative effect of these weak ties on interviews and offers. Although the impact is very small, we saw that point for more weaker connections, more people that we don't really know well, but if we add them on LinkedIn, we get less interviews and less offers. This is sort of what we say weakness of a weak tie. Now, when I mentioned this result to David Crackart, who talked about the strength of strong ties, he said, yeah, I could believe that. A friend of the world is no friend of mine. I don't care about a person who has thousands of other friends, right? And he said, but I've heard the statement somewhere. And he did the research and found that he attended a Moliere's play, Misanthrope, and in that play, Moliere said, friend of the whole human race is not to my liking. So it's like, if I am friends with too many people, so again, so John and I are strong connections, and I'm connected with 1,000, 2,000 friends or other people, and I ask John for help, he's going to see that I'm connected with so many people, and thus might think, like, why should I spend time? I might be approaching so many more people, or I'm connected with 5 additional people in his company, so I really don't need to help him, right? Thus, the return I get is lower, right? So some of the thoughts why there is a negative effect of these weaker connections is network transparency. These online social networks display or show your network information to all your connections. How many people you're connected with? How many people are in your network that are in the same company? How many people might be common to both me and my friend, right? Weaker, strong ties. Because I'm adding so many people on LinkedIn, I'm not spending time. The time is the limited resource here. So I'm not spending enough time to communicate with my stronger connections to make them stronger. So thus my strong ties are still weak because I spent more time in adding more people, right? Or it could be weaker information. So suppose I go to Larry, and Larry is my weaker friend. I send in my resume and say, Larry, can you pass it on to your hiring manager? Larry says, sure, why not? He passes on, but he doesn't really know me well, right? So he passes on the resume to his manager, but the job is not really a fit. So I don't get a job. So there was a job lead because of the weaker connection, but I don't get it because it wasn't a good fit. Whereas a strong connection, maybe if I do the same thing with John, he's going to look at the job opportunity. He knows me. So he's going to say, this job is probably more relevant for Rajiv, so I'm going to pass on the resume for this job, right? So those are some thoughts why having more weaker connection could have a negative effect on your job, interviews, or offers. So the question is there a magic number on how many weak ties, strong ties I should have on LinkedIn? The answer is no, right? So there's no magic number. It depends on each individual's characteristic. But there's a thought. So based on the calculations in the data, I found that you can have 10 times more weak ties as the strong ties. So if you add 10 more connections on LinkedIn that you don't know very well, you should focus on making one connection or adding one connection that's strong to you, right? Because those strong people will help you convert any job opportunity to interview or offer. Additionally, looking at the Dunbar's number, now Dunbar number says 150 as a cognitive limit for reasonable, or I forgot the right word, but yeah, reasonable number of connections. Now those are, we classify as more of a stronger connection. So try to limit the strong ties as 150. And even if you reach that number, I mean, kudos or pat on the back to you. Like 150 strong connections is hard. I mean, I probably, if I have to count, it's probably 20, 25. The people I've talked to, they've seen 50. Nobody has gone over 50. But still, you can go up to 150. So total number of connections you can have on LinkedIn is 1,650 maximum, right? So, I mean, you can say that's a magic number, but just a thought. Now, in summary, weak ties are needed to search more and to find information about potential job opportunities. Strong ties are useful in converting job applications or leads to interviews and interviews to offers. Having too many weak ties can hurt the value received from online social networks, right? So, 3 key points. Now, taking an example, suppose Mike, I'm not sure if you recognize the cartoon, Michael Dell, say he's looking for a candidate and for a job, and he posts the job on Monster, right? A potential applicant sees the job, like is looking for a job, sees the job at Monster, and sends a resume, submits a resume to be seen by Mike. Alternatively, this Bill, the job seeker, could look at his social networks on Facebook, LinkedIn, or other platforms and find a common connection to see if there is someone he's connected to who might be connected with Mike, because Mike's the one who posted the job, right? Suppose he finds this other guy, right, who's a common connection. He could then send his resume to George and ask George to forward the resume to Mike, right? Also, Mike, when posting the job on Monster, could have forwarded the job posting to George, asking for help to find candidates, which George could send to Mike and other people in his network, right? So the idea is, by having these connections, you can apply for a job even if you find the information on, say, an alternative platform. But now, if Mike goes to George asking for help to find candidates, and George is sending out to his entire network, then maybe George's network has 2 people who are looking for a job, right? So if both of them then sends a resume to George and says, I like this job, this is a great opportunity, can you forward my resume? What should George do, right? George is going to pass on the resume with maybe better words or good recommendations for a person he's closer to. Suppose he's more closer to Bill than Barack, so he's going to forward Bill's resume to Mike, right? And what happens, like, in the communication? So George is sending the resume to Mike and saying, hey, Mike, I'm attaching Bill's resume for a job opening. Mike could come back and says, thanks, George, but how do you know Bill, right? There are 3 basically responses or kinds of responses that George can make. 1, he's a good friend. It's a stronger tie. Maybe he'll add some positive words or statements in comments. And Mike will say, OK, that's great, so I'm obliged to consider Bill for the position. Alternatively, the response could be relatively neutral. He could say, I have met him a couple of times. He's not really adding a strong recommendation because the person is known, but not really that close. So Bill, or Mike, sorry, will consider Bill as a potential candidate among the pool of other candidates, right? Whereas if George says, he connected with me on LinkedIn, I don't really know him, then Mike will say, yeah, I don't care. George doesn't care about this guy. I probably don't care. Because most of the neutral recommendations are considered as negative. Most people or job applicants, when they send recommendations, they're positive, right? So if you use a weaker tie who's likely to give a neutral recommendation, then it's sort of a negative effect on your job interviews or offers, right? So suppose after the job submission or resume submission process, Mike goes back to George and says, hi, Mike, we interviewed Bill and are now seeking recommendations. How would you, or would you say he's a good candidate? Now, George, again, would have 3 choices. He could say he's great. He's a great friend. He's wonderful. He'll make a difference into your firm, and so forth. And that's where the interview got converted to an offer. He could be neutral and say, I think so. He's not sure. Then Mike's evaluation is purely based on his own evaluation, not the recommendation, right? Or alternatively, I don't know. I just connected with him on LinkedIn, so I don't know how good Bill is. Again, this neutral is considered weak, right? So Mike might think that Bill is hiding something. Sorry, George is hiding something because he doesn't want to say anything good about this guy we interviewed, right? So having those weaker connections recommend you could actually hurt in converting an interview to an offer, right? So back to the question, should I use my connections to then apply for a job? The answer is yes, because probability that Mike looks at Bill's resume when Bill submitted the resume on Monster is only 25%. Whereas if the probability that Mike looks at the resume when George submits a resume is over 90%, you would open almost every email that came to you from your friend, right? So if the visibility is important, because you have, say, 250 resumes on an average for a job, now you want your resume to be seen by the hiring manager. It's important. If it doesn't get seen, you're not considered. Now the main thing is, if the resume is seen, you want to work on that connection to make it stronger. So the recommendation is not really neutral, it's better than neutral, right? So the job search strategy is basically, it's a cyclic process of 3 different components. 1, you identify potential opportunities and connections. 2nd, you connect with people. So you identify people, you identify opportunities, then you connect with people if you don't know them, right? And then you convert those connections, opportunities, into something more meaningful for you, right? So let's look a little bit more deeper into this. When I say identify, so if you go on LinkedIn, I'm taking example of LinkedIn. I mean, most of the social networks have these features, but LinkedIn is just easier. If you go to a company's webpage on LinkedIn, LinkedIn shows you how many people in your network work in that company, the first degree and the second degree. The first degree are people who are directly I'm connected with. Second degree are my friends, friends of my friends, right? So if there are second degree, I can ask for email from my friends of those second degree connections and get connected with them, right? And also on these companies' pages, it also shows how many jobs are available for a specific company, right? But if I'm looking for a specific kind of a job, I can do a keyword search and look at all the job postings that are out there and look at how many people work for the company where the job is posted, or that company that posted the job, right? Now 63 people is sort of an aggregate of my first degree, second degree, and third degree. Now third degree is a little too far because a friend of my friend, no, friend of a friend of my friend is harder to connect, right? It's possible, but it's still harder. But you want to focus, say, on first or second degrees. So if I look at the word analyst, there were 8,000 jobs with 856 posted in my first degree, 5,400 in my second degree. So what this shows is that a friend of my friend is working for a company, and those companies collectively have 5,000 job openings. That's a lot, right? If I look at a specific job description, it shows me on this side if I'm connected with the hiring manager or which all people I'm connected with in the company who's hiring. So this is where you identify people, identify opportunities, right? So say if I identify, say I need to connect with Jacqueline to apply for this job, or maybe Jacqueline can help me get connected with the hiring manager for this job. Then I need to connect. I can connect with Jacqueline. Either I can try to find somebody from AT&T in the recommended list. So LinkedIn recommends people, right? So it gives you a list of like 10 pages of people that you may know. Look for people who are working at, say, AT&T, right? If you find, you can connect with them. Once you connect, you can convert. So I'll come back to that. Or you can get introduced by a common connection, right? So there is somebody in common. So the person is a second degree and is a friend of my friend. So I can ask my friend to connect me with, say, Jacqueline in the previous case. Or I can send in-mails. The in-mails used to be free 10 years ago, 8 years ago, but LinkedIn decided to make this as a premium feature. So you need to spend $30 per month, but if you don't have a premium account, you get first month free. But you need to find the email in your mailbox from LinkedIn that says you have a 1 free trial, right? But you can send 5 messages to 5 different people asking, can you connect with me, or I'm looking for a job, can I get or talk to you for 10 minutes or so over the phone, email, or so forth, right? Once you connect with those people, then you want to convert them. You want to convert them to a stronger connection. You want to convert the opportunities to, say, interviews, or interviews to offers, right? So you start by sending out an email, which is more professional, personal email, saying, so, hey, Larry, your company is doing great. You're in a wonderful department. Your department is growing. And I'm looking for a career change. Would your group be looking for something or for new candidates or seeking challenges? Right? So some emails which are a little bit more personal but are still professional. I can connect with those people on social network. So suppose Larry is on Twitter. I might start following him on Twitter. Right? So whatever he's saying, I'm reading those sort of comments, and maybe I'm adding my own thought and retweeting his tweet with my own thoughts. Right? So then Larry knows me, because he probably, if he's posting on Twitter, now he sees that I'm retweeting his tweet, so he figures out, okay, I know Rajiv. And then I connect on LinkedIn. Yeah, I know Rajiv from Twitter, right? I could ask if I have email, if I'm able to connect, I can meet people for coffee or lunch or something. Or I can co-attend social event. LinkedIn shows the groups a person is a member of, right? So say there is a Austin Management Association, a group, and say Larry is a member of that group, and I see that he's a member of that group. I see from the website that they have a meeting once a month. Now, Management Association sounds like something of my interest too. So I'll start by joining the group, or start attending the meetings, and network with people like Larry or others who might be hiring at different companies, right? One word of caution is there's a fine line between trying to connect and stalking. So by now, Larry might be thinking I might be stalking him, right? He says yes. All right. Okay. So now, yes, so I could identify opportunities, connect with more people, and convert the strength of those connections, right, or opportunities. The question now, you might ask is, I don't have that many strong connections on LinkedIn. And the answer is simple. Add. So you definitely have some connections on Facebook, which are stronger. Add them on LinkedIn, right, if they're professional, right, not your kids or nephews or so forth. Or convert. If you don't have more strong connections, maybe meet people, socialize, go to these social events, social professional events. But you might ask, I don't have that many strong or weak connections. And if you're one of those people who is asking this question, actually you spent time attending the wrong seminar. There was a rocket science seminar next door. There's no rocket scientist here, right? Okay. You might also ask, so I have too many connections on LinkedIn. Should I now then unfriend them? Take Jimmy Kimmel's advice. I would say no, right? I would keep or add people who I have interacted with. By interacted with, I would say, if they sent you an email, you responded back, and they responded back one more time. That's, I would say, a close interaction. So if there are people like that, I would keep them in your network. Don't drop them. They might be useful at some point of time. But focus on building more stronger connections. Focus on communicating with them, reading what those people are doing if you're interested in their kind of work, their company, their organization, their group, right? Another question could be, I'm unemployed. So should I ask everyone in my network for help? The answer is no. I mean, yes, you should, but there's a better way. Now, the better way is, say, if I go out and ask somebody for help, or every person, say all of you are in my LinkedIn network, and you all are weak ties. If I go to every one of you and say, hey, I'm looking for a job, right? At some point, it'll appear that I'm doing spamming, right? But there's a better passive way. And this passive way came because LinkedIn wanted to keep people engaged, keep coming back to LinkedIn, right? So what they do is, every week, every few days, they send an email out telling you about the updates in your network, right? So your goal is, so if you're unemployed, update your current title or description and update it periodically, every few weeks, right? So you're not approaching people for help, but people automatically know that you might be looking for a job, right? One suggestion would be avoid boring titles or descriptions like I'm unemployed or looking for a job. Be more creative. Some titles that I've seen is CEO of Me Inc. or Manager of All for Hire, right? So be creative. But when these kind of information gets updated or sent to all of your friends automatically, you're not approaching them, but if they know of a position, they can come back to you, right? Another question could be, if I signal I'm unemployed, won't it appear desperate? Yes, but you need a job soon, right? And there is some data. So what we found from our research is unemployment signal is correlated with your unemployment duration, right? So if you signal that you're unemployed, the unemployment duration is actually lower, is much smaller. So I mean, that doesn't mean everybody should say that I'm unemployed, because there's a catch. The unemployment signal is also correlated with lower starting salary. So people who mention that they are unemployed, they actually got lower salary than people who didn't say that. So people who said, I'm a CEO of nextgenconsulting.com, and that's just my company, one-man company, but they still got better job than the people who said I'm unemployed, right? Because there's some sort of information opaqueness between the recruiter and the job seeker, right? The next question could be, I'm a recruiter. Why should I hire from my or any social network? That's a very valid point. Like, so we're talking about how it can help job seekers. Now there might be so many job seekers, like 20 million job seekers looking for a job, and the recruiters might get bombarded with resumes on online social networks. So maybe I don't want to hire. And the answer to those recruiters is because recruitment costs are low for online social networks, and retention and productivity is high. Now, how do I come up with these answers? Now, if you look at, I'm talking about the lower cost, there's lower recruitment cost. On an average, for an engineering, software engineering position, companies spend about $10,000 to $11,000 to hire one person. That includes advertising, the software for screening, telephonic interviews, on-site interviews, and so forth. But most of the Fortune 500 companies also have incentives in place for referrals. So they will say, if you get us a person or a candidate, and if that person is hired, we'll give you $2,000 extra, right? Most of the employees then won't send tens, 20s, or hundreds of resumes to the hiring manager. They'll probably recommend one or two people. And they're recommending those one or two because they're doing screening for the company themselves, right? They want friends who are closer to them, who they think are nice, and they want to recommend those people only, right? So companies saved a lot of money in manpower and resources in the first screening phase, right? Manager got lesser number of resumes. HR, maybe manager gives those resumes to HR. So instead of 250, they might get 25. Screening 5 candidates out of 25 is much easier, right? Second is information transparency. So by being on online social network, getting a candidate from a social network, there is a larger information transparency. Now, what we saw from the data is people who found jobs using online social networks or just social networks got lower salaries compared to people who found jobs using internet. And the reason is, when somebody applies for a job using internet, the recruiter doesn't really know the person very well, or all the information about the person. Person could fake the title, right? So I'm, say, software engineer. I could write senior software engineer. Nobody cares, nobody knows, right? It's on internet. But on LinkedIn, I cannot do that because my friends who are working in the same company know I'm a software engineer, right? If I send my resume through a friend, that person knows that I'm a software engineer. So I cannot negotiate on better perks or benefits or higher salary because of that information transparency, right? These skills are known socially. So if a friend recommends you for a job, so if John was recommending me for a job, John knows my skills. So when he recommends, he thinks, okay, Rajiv is great in C++, but maybe not as great in Java. The position is Java, he's honest, right? So I will be able to, not able to negotiate more for a position that's looking for a Java developer because my skills are C++, right? The second part was higher employee productivity and retention. And this came from the Gallup's First Break All the Rules book. So if you're in a management position, this is a book, again, must-have book. They have 12 questions to basically be a better manager. One of the questions is that the managers ask their team. And one of the questions is, do you have a best friend at work, right? The reason is if you have a best friend or a good friend at work, you'll be less stressed. If you want to go for lunch, you want to go for coffee, or you're bored, you're stressed out, there's a person you can connect with or talk to and go out for coffee who'll listen to you, right? Whereas if you don't have a friend, like, I want to go for coffee, I'm tired, but I can't go with anybody because everybody's working, so I'll keep working. My productivity is lower, right? And the same question is then adopted in Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies to work for survey, right? If you have a friend at work, you're more productive. And if you have a good friend, best friend at work, you're going to stay with the company longer because you're happy, right? So then the question is, can someone help me better understand and measure these costs and benefits? Yes, we are doing that right now. If you're interested in participating, let us know. Second, I'm an entrepreneur. Should I be using these online social networks? And this is what John talked about in the beginning. Again, we're doing a study on this, trying to understand how social networks play a role in decision-making by entrepreneurs, or decisions that are made by entrepreneurs. More questions? All right, thank you. No more questions? Wow. Yes. Sorry. Okay.
Applying stuff online
The microphone
is. Oops. So I was talking about being on ExecuNet. They provide seminars, and they say don't bother applying to ads at all, any of them online,
right?
Because it's a waste of your time. But the only way you're going to get a job is through your social network.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that's what, so. And I send them messages saying, "Well, explain that," and they won't ignore me, you know.
Yeah.
So why is it that they? I mean, your information is slightly different than what
the ExecuNet
what
says.
they're saying. Yeah.
So ExecuNet is saying that you should only search on social networks?
Well, their seminars say that.
Okay.
But that, I mean, that's not what the job site's about,
Right.
But so you know, so why have all these? What they really should do is focus on their networking and their recruiting part, right?
Why should you focus?
Well,
I'm trying to get to the
messages I'm getting is it's like almost a total waste of your time to apply to
social networks.
No, to apply to ads.
Applying to ads.
To Monster Board or,
right.
or
so
ExecuNet or any of those.
It's a very good thought, and the reason is, suppose you have certain skill sets which are very relevant for the job. The software that screens resumes have become much more sophisticated. So if a person or a company, say Google, is looking for C++ programmers, and your resume reflects projects or skills that are associated with, say, C++, then your resume is most likely to get screened. Now, you want to apply also when you don't know somebody in the company. So say for Google, right, if I don't have any second-degree connection, I don't have any first-degree connection, maybe I have some third-degree connection. I'm trying to connect with those people. All of this takes time, right? So, but you want your resume to be seen because job opportunity is a time bomb. Like it's going to go away as soon as they find somebody. So you want to have your resume in the database. Plus, most of the large companies have a database. So even if you submit your resume through a social network, at a certain point of time, they will ask you to fill in an online application. So you are in the online database. So all the managers can put in their notes. So I used to work, for the companies I worked, they all used Oracle-based candidate management system, right? So after interviews, telephonic interviews, emails, we would dump all of that information into the software, right? So if you don't connect, or if you don't have a connection, and if you have the right skill set, you want to apply online. But in most of the cases, it's definitely a waste of time. But if you have time, unemployed, yeah, go for it. Right?
Okay, thank you.
They actually are doing it for the recording thing, so they can record the audio.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Do you recommend that besides conducting your job search, focusing your job search through the social media using LinkedIn, that you also resort to alternative, or how important is it to use alternative social media tools? I'm pretty retro on all this, but in any event, I think I understand. Besides LinkedIn, the premier social media tool, is it? Should you also make a point of working through Twitter and Facebook, for example?
Right.
Thanks.
That's a very, very good point. One of my colleagues, Alessandro from Carnegie Mellon, is actually doing a study on Facebook. So how Facebook actually hurts the recruitment process. Now, Facebook is more of a personal social network, right? You can apply or look for jobs. Most of the time, so if people who are looking for jobs using Facebook are artists or actors, right? They would have pictures, so they want to show off their talent, which is more visual. They would resort to Facebook, right? But in most other cases, there's not really much you can do or show on Facebook, say as a programmer, right? Facebook doesn't allow you to submit a code that could be displayed. It doesn't allow you to have sort of your resume. Twitter, on the other hand, shows your expertise in content. So when you tweet messages, your ideas, your thought, it actually gives an idea to recruiters on, yeah, this candidate or this person sounds knowledgeable in specific area, right? You're following some maybe content from, say, big data, right? So you follow big data and you're adding your own thoughts. A recruiter might see, this person is what I'm looking for. This is the thought process I need in the company. Twitter thus plays a role in actually screening in people or screening out, like maybe this person is all over the place, I really don't care. Or this person is so focused on big data, good thoughts, I want to hire him, right? So Twitter allows you to show off your talent more in terms of your thoughts. Facebook is more visual if you have the visual showcase. LinkedIn is essentially your resume, right?
You mentioned that if you have too many connections on LinkedIn, you mentioned that if you have too many connections on LinkedIn, that would possibly signify that you're spreading yourself too thin and that somebody doesn't necessarily need to help you because you can turn elsewhere. How can other members within LinkedIn tell how many connections you have? Because I have like a 500 plus, but if you if you get a premium LinkedIn membership, does it actually quantify the amount of connections for other viewers, or how does it work?
So very good question. Your friends know how many connections you have. So if they can actually look at your contacts and they can see how many connections you have. They cannot directly connect with them. But it's correct that on your profile page, it only shows 500 plus. So irrespective of how many connections you have beyond 500, it's hidden on just your profile page. People who are your connection have to put in extra effort to see your connections, the actual number. People who you're not connected with, they don't see that. All they see is the 500 plus, right? And all of this information, again, could be controlled. So LinkedIn has options to limit what information is seen by your friends, by yourself, or by the public.
Okay, so that is a feature then. Okay, thank you.
So my question is that I'm currently in a job search, and all my previous experience has been in higher education. I just moved here, so I'm definitely open to higher education, but I also am kind of investigating and researching right now more of the corporate world. So how do I, you know, in that top little header part, like say, yes, I'm still interested in higher ed without the corporate world thinking, she's got a lot of higher ed.
Yeah.
You know, how does that work?
It's a very good point. And actually, I lost a job because I mentioned I was interested in higher ed. So this was when I was doing my master's. I can name the company now, I guess. It's Texas Instruments. They really liked me. Everything was great. And this person says, so you mentioned that you are interested in research. So are you interested in higher ed? I said, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I said, okay, so come back to us when you finish your master's. Higher ed people are not really looking for you on LinkedIn. So there's no point in saying that I'm going to go for higher ed. Focus on the corporate world, because those are the people who are going to look at your profile on LinkedIn, right? And if, say, university is getting applications, nobody really goes to LinkedIn profile and say what you submitted in your application is correct or not, or so forth. Right? Mm-hmm.
What is your recommendation when you get a request to be connected and you have no idea where this person is from, you see no association with them regarding their background or your background, you're almost afraid to view their profile because then they know that you looked at their profile and you're not interested. I mean, should you accept?
It's a very valid point. Now, if you think as a job seeker, this person might be good in connecting you with other people, then maybe you want to accept, right? In most cases, somebody is sending you a request. They are new to LinkedIn, and they're just clicking on everybody that LinkedIn is recommending. Right? But, I mean, you get recommended to them. You're popular, right? So, so I would avoid, in most cases, if you don't know the person, what's the point in connection with them, right? Unless this is the CEO of Google or something. Yeah, I mean, that's a different story. Right? But in most cases, people who are connecting don't know how to use LinkedIn or are new to LinkedIn, right? If you look at their profile, if you don't find any value as a job seeker, then there's no point in connecting with them, right? I personally leave the invitations open. Like I never archive them. I have like 50 connections requests in my LinkedIn account because those are people I don't know how I connect with them.
You ignore them?
I don't do anything. The invitations are sitting there.
One thing I do, email them and ask them, can you please let me know how we're connected, just refresh my memory? And a lot of times, if they are just spamming people, they never get back to you, and you don't feel bad about this.
That's true. That's true too. Yeah. Assuming if you have time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I'm in the process of interviewing for a company right now. I've had 3 rounds of interviews. My question is, if I don't end up getting the job, but I'm still interested in this company, in this field, is it appropriate if I actually send a friend request on LinkedIn to the people who interviewed me? Because I've spoken with them and corresponded with them even if I don't get the job, because maybe in the future, I
Right. So connect with them on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very fair point, and I think you should. The reason is, so when you connect with them on LinkedIn, like it's again sort of a closure with the thank you note, right? So you didn't get a job, but you're saying by sending an invitation request, it's up to them whether they connect or not. But it's up to them about that. But what you're saying is no hard feelings. I understand. Thank you. But let's connect on LinkedIn and let me know if anything comes up in future, right? So in most cases, I would say yes, right? Sorry, she's controlling the question. So
most of the conversation so far has been from the assumption that the job seeker is doing the connecting. What portion of this is coming from, say, a recruiter who's trying to fill a position? Are they really using these networks to kind of seek out people that way?
So if I understand the question, should you accept connections if you're a recruiter?
No, I'm kind of asking, in creating job offers and interview offers, are those coming from recruiters actively seeking new people in the network?
How are recruiters using LinkedIn?
How?
Recruiters using LinkedIn.
So, okay, how are recruiters using LinkedIn? Now, LinkedIn sells a recruiter account for $100 a month. What they allow you to do with that recruiter account is search for keywords, skills, or anyone, first, second, third, nth degree person on the LinkedIn who's part of LinkedIn, and see their entire profile. So with the recruiter account, you can see any person and possibly, and there's a limit on how many people you can communicate with or send a message to. So you can do that. And one of our studies with the entrepreneurs, we're actually doing, so Brian, sitting at the back, is doing exactly that thing. So you have a recruiter account, you get a separate page, and you can do whatever you want in terms of search. So you can say, I'm looking for people who have Java expertise who are working for Google, right? It will list all people who are working for Google with Java as a skill set. And you can send a message. I think there's a limit of 10, Brian? 10, or there's some messages, number of messages you can send for free, but then you can pay additional $10 or something to send more messages, right? So that's how most of the recruiters actually find people. Sorry about the microphone thing.
Thank you. So is there a best practices LinkedIn guidebook, like how you go to a career coach and they're like, this is how your resume should look and things like that? I've already gotten some feedback on mine, like my picture's all wrong and stuff like that. But you look at the disparity out there. Some people have like they might be a software engineer, but I mean, it reads like they're an executive at the company and stuff like that. And some people like me are just like, I've worked here, So is there like any guidance or do you have any background on that, on like where to go to for best practices on the profile?
It's a very good question. I don't have a good answer for it. I'm sure there's plenty of people who say on web how you should format your profile on LinkedIn. So if I'm a recruiter, I mean, I was a hiring manager some time ago, and all I looked for is people who stood out, right? So if you have, say, the regular job titles, company name, and so forth, but everybody has that, right? So what is different about you? Are you really a master of something that I'm looking for? So how do you differentiate yourself from the crowd? I mean, that's just my thought. Like, do whatever you like, be creative, as long as you're conveying the right message. But you had a thought on that.
Well, LinkedIn actually has a resource page that's really awesome.
Okay.
So I don't know the off the top of my head, but they walk you through like how to really build your profile, and so it's a good resource.
All right. So this is on Texas Enterprise, or?
It's on LinkedIn. So
Oh, it's on
LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
has its own
Okay.
resource page. I can't remember the link.
Okay. Just search for it. So, but I'm sure there's plenty of other pages too.
if you're on LinkedIn, you can be endorsed by your connections. What value do you place on those endorsements?
Can you speak a little bit?
If you're on LinkedIn, you can be endorsed for certain skills by
right.
your connections. I'm curious to know how you value those endorsements, because I have my own opinions about that.
So, it's a very good question. I didn't care about those skills, and all the people we surveyed, talked to, nobody really cares what they have with their skills. I mean, personally, if I survey, so how many of you know what skills you're endorsed for on LinkedIn? Like, do you know every skill you're endorsed for on LinkedIn? Okay, very few, maybe 5% or so. Most people don't know, right? The advantage where that endorsement comes in is within a corporate network. So Accenture, if I remember the firm correctly, they took a LinkedIn sort of a corporate platform and implemented it internally in the organization. So Accenture has consultants who have diverse skill sets. Now, Accenture being a large organization, if there is a person, a project manager, looking for certain people, consultants within the company with certain kind of skills, he can do a skill search and identify those people. That's where it's more useful, right? When we look at the recruiter page, when you're doing the keyword search, the skills, again, are useful because they do appear in the search results, right? So empirically, we don't have an evidence that they help. But I've seen it working within the company as an organization, like finding people within the company, or on recruiter page as part of the search result. Now, say if I search for Java, I don't have anything else in my Java, in my experiences, but my skill set does say Java. So I'll show up, right? But how does LinkedIn put me on the entire list? When there probably are, say, 1 million people with Java skill set, would I be, because it's only a skill, endorsed skill, would I show up at the bottom? Or if I write it in my job description, will I show it at the bottom or top, right? I don't know for sure.
I'm going to piggyback on that question because there's where you can ask people to endorse you, written endorsement, so it's like a mini reference in there. How important is that? Do they look at that at all?
It's so what we found was there is no impact. We found people who had more recommendations versus less had really, there's no meaning for outcome of that. The reason is, anytime a person recommends, LinkedIn actually nags the other person to write a recommendation back, right? So maybe the recommendations are a result. So say if I have 10 recommendations, maybe those 10 recommendations came because I recommended 10 people. They're not truly honest recommendations by people who submitted the recommendation. Additionally, I screen what recommendations show up on my page and what don't, right? So it's very biased. So and that's our thought on why we saw no evidence or no impact of those recommendations on a job outcome, right?
Yeah, I didn't think it would probably impact how they looked at you. I've actually used it in resumes. I've taken sections of those, what they've said, and put it out like on the top of my resume so they can see what others have said about me without actually being able to contact them. So I've used it differently.
Okay. No, I think that's a very valid thing. Although I would, this is just a personal thought, recommend moving them at the bottom rather than at the top, because most of the software that's read the resumes, because people are not reading. So you can have two resumes, one which is read by humans, one that are read by computers. So the one that's read by computer, you want to keep those things at the bottom so they don't confuse the software. Computers are not that smart.
Thank you. Do you have any data as to the extent to which different industries use social media at all in hiring, and also by occupation as well? The variation,
so
you mentioned
is there
higher
data
education,
on which companies or industries and jobs use more social
you
network?
mentioned corporate, and then you mentioned higher ed doesn't. Do you have broader? Can you speak to that question a little more broadly?
So in terms of just hiring, no. There is so far no data that I saw that tells these are the companies who are using LinkedIn or social networks for job search versus these are that don't. That is a very good statistic that somebody needs to come up. That data is not public. Nobody wants to disclose, really, so that I'm looking for people using LinkedIn, right? So if a hiring manager says that I'm looking for people on LinkedIn, he'll get 100, 200, 300 requests to connect with them on LinkedIn, right?
What about public versus private, nonprofit, anything?
It's true, yeah.
You have some laws that are, requiring you to search it.
True, true. I don't know the data, yeah. I think so far in my study, I haven't seen that data set yet. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.